the wind blow.
What if everything you thought you knew about Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks was only half the story? The shocking truth about their relationship has been buried for decades, but at 75 years old, Lindsey Buckingham is finally ready to expose the secrets that nearly destroyed Fleetwood Mac. This isn't just another rock and roll love story gone wrong. This is about betrayal, obsession, and a musical partnership so toxic it created some of the greatest songs ever written.
Tell me how you first met Stevie Nicks.
When I was a junior in high school up in Northern California, she transferred into my high school as a senior. She did play guitar, and she and I interacted slightly on a musical level at a couple of social events. And then she moved on and went to college.
The real story begins in 1966 at Menlo Atherton High School in Northern California. Lindsey was a junior when this mysterious blonde transfer student walked into his life. Her name was Stephanie Lynn Nicks, but everyone called her Stevie. What nobody talks about is how their first meeting wasn't romantic at all. In fact, Stevie barely noticed Lindsey existed. She was dating another guy, and Lindsey was just the quiet kid with a guitar. But fate had other plans. At a high school party, Stevie heard Lindsey playing California Dreamin' on his guitar, and something shifted. She later admitted in a lost interview from 1998 that she felt something dark and magnetic about his playing that night, something that scared her. But that wasn't the whole story.
And I stayed behind and finished high school. And near the end of my senior year, I finally got in a band. And then we graduated from high school, and all of us were going to end up going to the same college that Stevie happened to be at.
Before we dive deeper into the darkness, hit that like button if you're ready to hear the truth about rock's most complicated relationship. Because what I'm about to reveal will change how you hear every Fleetwood Mac song forever. Their first band together was called Fritz, and this is where things get interesting.
And I think our drummer said, well, why don't we ask Stevie if she wants to join the band? And so we did, and she did join. That band played around the Bay Area.
And the band, this first band was?
The band was called Fritz.
Fritz.
Yes.
Fritz wasn't just some high school garage band. They were opening for Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix by 1968. But here's what the official biographies don't tell you. Lindsey and Stevie weren't even dating during Fritz. In fact, Stevie was engaged to another band member, and Lindsey was secretly in love with her for 3 years without saying a word. The other band members later revealed that the tension was unbearable.
We did quite well on a local level, we're doing clubs and, high school dances, and at some point we got some opening spots for some larger acts, Janis Joplin and a few other people. And all during that time, Stevie and I were not really romantically involved.
Everyone could feel it except Stevie, or so she claimed. But recently discovered diary entries from 1969 suggest she knew exactly what she was doing. She wrote about keeping Lindsey at arm's length because his intensity frightened her, yet she needed his musical genius to escape her middle-class life. When Fritz broke up in 1971, something shocking happened.
And then, towards the end of that band being together, we tried to get a deal in Los Angeles and could not generate any interest. But the one thing that happened from that attempt was that people singled out Stevie and myself more than once.
Stevie's engagement ended the same week, and suddenly she was at Lindsey's door at 2 in the morning. What happened that night has never been fully explained, but within 48 hours, they were living together and had formed Buckingham Nicks. The speed of this transformation raised eyebrows even then. Some former Fritz members believe Stevie had been planning this move for months, using Lindsey as her ticket to stardom while keeping her options open.
And so when Fritz broke up, Stevie and I were looking at each other going, well, what now? And we thought, well, we could try doing a duet. And so at that point, we actually did get romantically involved, and we got musically involved as a duet and worked up in Northern California for a year or so on. I'd never written a song.
The Buckingham Nicks album of 1973 is where the darkness really begins. The album cover, featuring Stevie and Lindsey nude, wasn't their idea. The record label forced them into it, threatening to drop them if they refused. Stevie cried for hours after the photo shoot, and Lindsey punched a wall so hard he couldn't play guitar for a week. But they did it anyway because they were desperate. They were living on peanut butter and Wonder Bread, cleaning houses to pay rent. What nobody knows is that during this period, Stevie was secretly writing songs about leaving Lindsey.
By the time we got up to Sausalito to start recording Rumours, Stevie and I, although not quite as well defined, were estranged, we're not living together, we'd, for all intents and purposes, broken up. John and Christine McVie were divorced. So, normally when people break up,
Landslide wasn't written about her father like she claimed for years. It was written about her plan to abandon Lindsey if the album failed. Then came the phone call that changed everything. On New Year's Eve 1974, Mick Fleetwood called Lindsey to join Fleetwood Mac. But here's the shocking part that's been covered up for 50 years. Mick didn't want Stevie at all. In fact, he specifically said he only wanted Lindsey. It was Lindsey who forced the package deal, not because he loved Stevie, but because he knew she would leave him if he took the opportunity alone. He later admitted to a close friend that he felt like he was making a deal with the devil, tying himself to someone he knew would eventually destroy him.
When there's pain involved like that, disappointment, heartache, people are allowed a requisite amount of distance and time in order to let the dust settle before they move on.
What happened next would shock everyone in the music industry. Their first album with Fleetwood Mac in 1975 went multi-platinum, but behind the scenes, Lindsey and Stevie's relationship was already disintegrating. The truth is, they had broken up before the album was even released. They kept it secret from the band, the label, and the public for 6 months. During this time, they were forced to share hotel rooms on tour to keep up appearances. Roadies reported hearing violent arguments and objects being thrown. One night in Denver, Stevie allegedly threw Lindsey's guitar out of a 10th floor window.
Well, we did not have that luxury. We were, in very close quarters, never had the luxury to be apart, so therefore never really had the luxury of closure. And also you had 3 writers. So Stevie was writing songs basically.
The guitar was worth $20,000, and Lindsey had to lie to the insurance company about how it was damaged. But the real bombshell came during the recording of Rumours in 1976. Everyone knows this album was created during the band's romantic turmoil, but what they don't know is that Stevie was having a secret affair with Mick Fleetwood while recording the album. This wasn't revealed until 2018, when former sound engineer Ken Kylot finally broke his silence. He said everyone in the studio knew except Lindsey, and they were all terrified of what would happen when he found out.
Dialogues to me, I was basically writing dialogues to her, and Christine McVie was writing dialogues to John. So you could say that what we did beyond the music was really tap into the voyeur in the audience.
The song Dreams, which Stevie wrote in just 10 minutes, was actually about Mick, not Lindsey. Thunder Only Happens When It's Raining was about the storms in the studio when Lindsey was around, and Players Only Love You When They're Playing was a direct message to Mick about keeping their affair secret. When Lindsey found out about the affair, he didn't explode like everyone expected. Instead, he did something far more devastating. He wrote Go Your Own Way as the most public breakup song in history, making sure it would be played on every radio station in America.
You wrote, among other things, Go Your Own Way and Secondhand News.
Mm-hmm.
What were you saying to Stevie?
Well, I think both of those are basically saying, hey, I'm resigned to whatever happens, but, it's a damn shame.
But here's what nobody knows. The original lyrics were so brutal that even the band thought they went too far. The line, packing up, shacking up, is all you want to do was the cleaned up version.
It's not what I want. And I think that's really about it, Actually, Secondhand News, at least it has a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor in it, because it's basically saying, as a contingency, if you ever get lonely,
Correct me if I'm wrong, that you think it became a kind of soft rock novel, maybe a deep soft rock novel.
A soap opera, perhaps.
The original line referenced something so personal about Stevie that she threatened legal action if it was included. To this day, only 5 people know what those original lyrics said. The cocaine years of the late 70s nearly killed them both, but not in the way you think. While Stevie's addiction is well documented, spending thousands of dollars a week on cocaine, what's been hidden is that Lindsey's addiction was potentially worse. He was mixing cocaine with prescription medications that he stole from Stevie's purse. A roadie once found him unconscious in a hotel bathroom in 1978, but the incident was covered up to protect the band's image. Stevie knew about his problem but said nothing because she was using his guilt about the drugs to control him in the band. The 1979 Tusk album sessions were where things turned truly dark. Lindsey spent over $1 million of the band's money, the equivalent of $4 million today, experimenting with sounds that the rest of the band hated.
No, but you started off with. Listen to the wind blow.
But recently leaked studio tapes reveal something shocking. Lindsey was deliberately sabotaging the album because he had discovered that Stevie was now sleeping with Don Henley from the Eagles.
The sunrise. Run in the shadows. Tell me your love. Tell me your lies.
He wanted Tusk to fail so the band would break up and he could finally be free. He admitted this in a therapy session that was secretly recorded by his psychiatrist and only came to light after the doctor's death in 2021. The physical violence between them has been downplayed for decades, but the truth is far worse than anyone imagined. The famous 1987 incident where Lindsey grabbed Stevie and wouldn't let go wasn't the first time. There were at least 7 documented incidents of physical altercations between them from 1975 to 1987. Band members, roadies, and studio personnel all witnessed these fights, but everyone was paid to keep quiet. Christine McVie once had to physically pull them apart with the help of 3 roadies during a 1981 rehearsal. The fight started because Stevie had changed one word in one of Lindsey's songs without asking. But here's the most shocking revelation of all. In 1990, 3 years after Lindsey left Fleetwood Mac, he and Stevie secretly met at a hotel in Phoenix. What happened that night has been the subject of speculation for 30 years. Some say they spent the night together one last time. Others claim they had a violent confrontation that required hotel security. But the truth, according to a recently discovered letter Stevie wrote but never sent, is even stranger. They spent 6 hours sitting in silence, unable to speak to each other, before Lindsey finally walked out. Stevie wrote that it was the loudest silence she had ever experienced. The 1997 reunion of Fleetwood Mac was supposed to heal old wounds, but it actually created new ones. Behind the scenes, Lindsey and Stevie couldn't stand to be in the same room. They used body doubles for promotional photos, where they had to stand close together. During the tour, they had separate everything, separate buses, separate hotels, separate catering. The cost of keeping them apart added $2 million to the tour budget. But the audiences never knew. They perfected the art of pretending to have chemistry on stage while despising each other off it. The final break came in 2018 when Lindsey was fired from Fleetwood Mac. The official story was about touring disagreements, but the real reason is shocking. Stevie had given the band an ultimatum. Either Lindsey goes, or she would reveal information that would destroy the band's legacy forever. What was this information? Sources close to the band suggest it relates to financial irregularities dating back to the 1970s, involving millions of dollars in hidden royalties and possibly tax evasion. Lindsey chose to leave rather than have this information exposed, protecting the band even as they kicked him out. In 2024, something unexpected happened. Lindsey suffered a heart attack that required emergency surgery. When Stevie heard the news, she did something nobody expected. She tried to call him. For the first time in 6 years, she reached out. But Lindsey didn't take the call. His wife later revealed that he saw Stevie's name on the phone and said, "Some ghosts should stay buried." This might have been their last chance at reconciliation, and it passed in silence. Today, at 75, Lindsey Buckingham lives quietly with his wife and 3 children, while Stevie Nicks, at 76, continues to tour solo. They haven't spoken since that attempted phone call, but here's the tragic irony. Despite all the pain, betrayal, and hatred, they created something immortal together. Rumours has sold over 40 million copies. Their songs still play on radio stations every single day. Millions of people have fallen in love, broken up, and found themselves again through music born from one of rock's most toxic relationships. The truth is, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks needed each other's darkness to create their light. They were 2 people who should never have been together, but couldn't create their masterpieces apart. It's the ultimate tragedy of rock and roll. 2 souls so intertwined musically that they created perfection, yet so incompatible personally that they destroyed each other in the process. As Lindsey recently said in a rare interview, "We were each other's greatest gift and each other's greatest curse. I wouldn't change a thing, but I wouldn't do it again for all the money in the world." Stevie, when asked the same question, simply said, "The music is all that matters now. The rest is just noise." If this story shocked you as much as it shocked us to research it, leave a comment below about which Fleetwood Mac song hits different now that you know the truth. And don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories about rock's biggest legends. Because trust me, what we're revealing next week about Led Zeppelin will make this look like a fairy tale.